And good morning, everybody. We're live. Congratulations. You made it through the week. Another amazing week of food safety, food quality, producing all those wonderful products that we all know and love. And behind the scenes, we know that you're out there working diligently to keep the food supply safe and keep everybody happy. And a lot of times at work, nobody notices, but Dr. D and I, we recognize that and we know what you're doing and we appreciate it. At the very least, we wanted to say thank you very much. If you're new to the chat, pull up a chair and join us. This is the Food Safety Chat Live, and every Friday at this time, 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern, or bright and early, 7 a.m. on the West Coast where Darin is, we join you for a conversation around a food safety topic. And what you'll notice with this, not a lecture, this is meant to be a conversation. And one of the really great parts of this is the fact that we get to interact with the audience and just have a great time answering and reflecting back on what we're talking about today. So if you're new to the chat, you probably recognize our guest anyway. So Dr. Darin Detwiler, a huge feature out there in the food industry, really advocating, and he is the founder of Detwiler Consulting Group. So how are you doing today, Darin?
Great. Thank you for making me get up so early.
Yay.
Yeah, you do that thing where you're like, all right, I'm going to go to bed at a reasonable time. And then you wake up and you're like, oh, I didn't oversleep, did I? And then you're like, oh, good. No, it's only 4:30 in the morning. And then you go back to sleep and that's when you sleep the hardest. So then when your alarm goes off, you're like, oh, I got to wake up,
Yeah. I got a fur alarm clock and he's not too good at figuring out the whole time change thing. So he's been getting us up an hour earlier saying, no, time to eat, time for bathroom, get up. It's like, oh man, okay, fine.
Yeah. Somehow we were raised to believe that pets don't read contracts and stick to contracts. But yeah, then the daylight saving hits and they're like, it's contractually, obligated to feed me at so many hours since then.
It's in there. And everybody's filing in here. Sean, yeah, good point. Never too early for food safety. We're never off the job with food safety. Nice to see Morgan, of course, Elena and Cheryl. Nice to see you guys. We tried a new format here. So there's a function in StreamYard where I can do live streams like we normally do. And then there's a thing called a webinar where we can then reuse it, which is awesome because I don't have to retype in all the stuff every week, and it makes life a little easier. So not quite sure if it's working quite right or not. Good. You can comment, Darin. That's good. So we're doing a little bit of a test here as well. So I think it's working so far, so good. So hopefully Brett's in the audience as well with Culture Advisory Group. We'll be talking about that. If you didn't notice on LinkedIn this morning, a bit of an announcement this morning for me. So we'll talk more about that here toward the end and some of the stuff we're doing around that as well. So tons to cover. It's always a great show when Darin's on. So of course, to get us all started here this morning, guys, join us for a sip of your favorite beverage, please. You got anything up? Yeah. There we go. Cheers. Empty. Oh, that's too awesome. The faux sip. So good. So with that, gosh, so much to go over today. Beautiful. It was very, very windy here. Most of the leaves got blown into our neighbors' yards, which is always a odd. Safe. Very cool. So if you notice in the comments, Darin put in there, so Podbean, is that, so we've got Safety A-Hole. By the way, if you haven't listened to that, really good. You're doing awesome work with that, Darin. Did you want to talk about that a little bit here before we get going, or?
Sure. I just wanted to remember to put the link in there. So answering the popular demand, having been on various podcasts and live events, my wife and I created our own podcast. It's called Confessions of a Food Safety A-Hole, and it is kind of a behind the scenes confessions. How did I get here? What was I thinking? And it's what are we at? I think we're in episode 5 or 6 now. But it's a lot of fun, and it's not all like necessarily just to focus on food safety. It's kind of like what it's like to be in the culture. So I think in the first, I I think in the first or second episode, I said, look, don't come to this podcast to learn about food safety, like temperatures and actions and stuff like that. Come to learn about the culture around food safety.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point, because part of it, when you work in this field, is it doesn't turn off, which can make life difficult sometimes in restaurants or other areas. Uh, Elizabeth Fernandez was talking about this recently, where she was doing some stuff for her local school and pointing out some of the food safety mistakes the other moms were making, and the other moms were kind of looking at her like, yeah, really? So she's like, I wonder if they're going to invite me back. So
Oh,
we'll see. How
there's definitely a bit of that going on. It's like, you know, I was talking in our latest episode about how we were, you know, how sometimes you're working on stuff and you have the TV on in the background, and it's like
Mhm.
not something you want to super pay attention to, but it's on the background. And I guess I was paying attention to it a little bit more because I just kept seeing violations. You know,
Mm.
it's one of those things. And within a rapid succession, there was a woman at a restaurant with her dog. Like, she's eating and she's got her dog. It's like one of those little dogs that can go in a purse kind of dogs.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, no, I don't care if it's for a TV show, a reality TV show. That, you know, the state law basically is, you know, it's allowed in certain situations, but it's supposed to be on the ground or in a, you know, in some kind of a carrying case or something like that. But you're not sitting there at a table, you know, with a dog. And then there was and I've seen this before, so it's not brand new, but there was a video on, you know, on social media, and this guy just goes over to, you know, sometimes grocery stores, you have the more kind of hybrid retail where you have not only the stuff in cans and frozen, but you have the almost like the buffet kind of serving
Oh,
of
yeah.
things. But they have like the heated soups, and you have the containers, and you can take soups, and which I never do, because this guy went
No.
right over and like he took the ladle out. And he's like, no, I don't like that one. Next one, put it back. Literally, he's sampling all of the 4 or 5 different soups with the ladle in his
Oh,
mouth and then puts it back.
oh,
Yeah. And it's like you could just like sense my blood pressure going, "Oh no." You know, you can't turn this stuff off sometimes. You see certain things and it's like, "Oh no. No, 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 no."
oh. Yeah, I would love to see a man on the street thing where you've got a mic and maybe security guard behind you, where you see something like this and you go up to him and say, "Do you know what you just did?" And and see what their reaction is. Oh my
Well, you know,
God.
that's one of the things in terms of why the podcast is Confessions of a Food Safety A-hole. I know that there's like, you know, don't quote me on the number, but there's like a 50-50 chance that either I'm going to say something and someone's going to go, "Oh, I am so sorry. Thank you for telling me the correct way. And I don't want anyone to get hurt. I'll never do that again. In fact, let's resolve this issue." Or the dude, who are you? Why are you saying something? You know, basically, you're an a-hole. Get out of here.
Yeah.
And uh, uh, oh yes, there you go, Martha on the chat. I was just talking about that in a LinkedIn post, um, uh, about the dog kind of thing. But in you know, I was recently on the Don't Eat Poop podcast with
Yeah,
Francine
great
Shaw
show.
at Matt Ragushi, and we're talking about how I ordered. I was at a restaurant meeting up with some folks, and I went to go get an iced tea, and basically you had to go to the bar to ask for an iced tea at this place.
Uh-huh.
And hey, can I get an iced tea? And I'm gonna kind of get visual here. Oh, sure, let me get you that iced tea. So the woman reaches over and she grabs a glass and she goes with the ice. And I'm like, you know, you have a scoop right there. why don't you use the scoop to put the ice in the glass? And she's like, why? I'm like, well, because if you break the glass in the ice, you can't tell the difference between glass and ice. And no one wants to be served ice with a side of glass in their drink. And besides, you're contaminating, with your hand to the glass, not to the ice. And she gave me that kind of, I've been working for, in this industry for 10 years. I think I know what I'm doing, cool your jets, man. And I'm like, okay. And basically my comment was that, I didn't want to really get into a game of let's
Yeah.
play uncover our CVs, kind of a deal. But you shouldn't have to. But it's like it's crazy. So in a way, it's like that was a form of you're an a-hole. Go away.
Yeah. How dare you? How dare you point these things out? Yeah. Not to mention the follow-up question could have been, oh, and by the way, when's the last time you actually cleaned inside that ice machine?
Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh.
Well, people wonder like why when I'm on a flight, why I don't consume ice in a
Ooh.
flight.
Or coffee. No, don't drink the brewed coffee on the airplanes.
I'm so predictable. Literally, if you were to be on a flight with me, you'd see that I bought a bottle of water, and I don't, I don't drink from the. I mean, I know they're doing a great job. I know they're wonderful people, but I don't need to add a level of difficulty or danger to my travels, and get sick from the ice.
Yeah, definitely. Oof. Well, with that, we'll further torture people with gross and disgusting and weird things with the dad joke. Are you ready, Dr. D, for the dad joke?
Yes, dad joke of the day.
All right, everybody, brace for it. Darin, what did the tomato say to his friends when he was running late?
What did the tomato say to his friends when he was running late? I was going to say something about tomato, but that doesn't make sense.
Oh, pretty close. But hey, guys, don't worry. I'll catch up. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man.
Well, I saw one just recently, and it definitely
All right.
sounded like a dad joke to me. What did the janitor say when he jumped out of the closet?
Oh, I know this one. I don't want to ruin it. Anybody else have a guess? What did the janitor say when he jumped out of the closet? Anybody? All right, I'll do it. Supplies.
Supplies.
Elena liked it. That's a good one. But now we're going to put on our serious a-hole hats now for our talk here for this week, which is recalls, everybody's favorite topic. And as you and I were chatting, getting ready to have our conversation here, we were talking about the recent prevalence of these recalls. I mean, there's a giant one going on right now with pasta as a supply base. And I thought I need to listen to this as well. Maybe if I dig it up, Brett, maybe if you can find this online, we'll put the link on here. I saw that Bill Marler's being interviewed on NPR in Seattle this morning. There's a 12-minute interview on this particular recall. So I'm going to be curious what he has to say. But as anybody who works in this space with food safety and deals with recalls, there's a phrase that always comes up that we wanted to focus in on because it's just like, really? Are you sure type phrase? And it's this phrase: in an isolated incident, ... which is the topic of our talk. And the phrasing in the recall notice, generally, Darin, always is read the same. It's in an overabundance of caution. XYZ Company is issuing a voluntary recall for this product, a potential product adulterated with Listeria. This is an isolated incident, and no illnesses have been reported to date, ... And then it goes on to talk about how the company is committed to food safety and working diligently with FDA to protect fade off into the background. first thing around this, with most people probably don't realize around this, but if you follow these things, you know it, is these press releases and these statements are written well in advance, aren't they?
Oh yeah, yeah. And you know what's crazy? Remember the 1960s Adam West Batman?
Oh yeah.
Remember the announcer? Whenever I read these, I always have that announcer's voice. Oh no, the fine, perfect, professional purveyors of pasta in an abundance of caution. And I know, like, I'm sounding like I'm making fun of this, but honestly, these pre-written announcements are is like, wait, is this an advertising for the company that they're sliding in a little tiny bit of a
Yes.
caution to the consumer? Or is this a warning to the consumer that, yeah, you start reading these and it's crazy. But yeah, that word isolated, it drives me crazy because there's only one reason why that word isolated is used. And that is to make us believe that we're safer than we really are.
Right.
And the thing that gets me is these are written as if this is the first and only time this event is ever going to happen. The first and
Mhm.
only time we're going to be talking about this issue, right? How many times? Oh, the recall has been expanded now. Or it's not just from this location, it's from this location as well. Or it's not just this, realize that this ingredient is in all these other products as well. So here's a list of 17 different products that are related to this ingredient that are now being recalled. It's amazing how isolated unravels almost every single time.
Yeah, and you will see a follow-up notice 2 weeks later where FDA will say, uh, expansion of recall based upon, and as food safety professionals, we know exactly what happened. FDA went into that facility, started their investigation, and just completely destroyed their isolated incident argument. And this seems to happen time and time again. And with this pasta recall with Nate's, oh yeah, we're definitely seeing it there. Part of this is part of this internal struggle behind the scenes of when a recall happens. Is it's this oh shit moment. You have this recall, all hell breaks loose, and the press release is written. And really, what's going on at this point in time is the lawyers are trying to manage this as much as they can. One of the lessons when I teach organizations about this and in the companies I worked at is once you have a recall, you haven't won. You cannot win this situation. There's still going to be people that think you can win this, but you cannot. The purpose here is to get back on course, correct it, eat as much crow as you have to, absorb the costs, fix what happened, and move on. Some people don't think that they can actually, quote unquote, win these type of things. And the lawyers, what they're doing with these type of statements too, is trying to limit future damages to the company. So when Bill Marler then comes in and sues the company, hopefully they can just limit it to a few potential activities. We're seeing more class actions, as Sean Stevens was talking about recently in these areas, and they're trying to control a situation that is really beyond control. It's a failure at that point in time, and that is a really isolated piece of that, and that's what we kind of really wanted to talk about here as well, because as food safety professionals, just like we were talking about with the restaurants and food service, you recognize patterns and you then look for these patterns. And that's part of why we do the chat. It's why I read all these recalls, probably like most of the people on here do as well. We're looking to the future. We're trying to identify patterns in these spaces. And so we wanted to kind of dive into just a few examples here, Darin, and then we'll kind of chat on these too. Is of course Peanut Corporation of America, Bluebell, Chipotle, Jimmy John's, Boar's Head. Now we've got this big Nate's Pasta recall. The commonality, Darin, with all of these, none of these were isolated, were they?
And not only is that a correct statement, but the different ways in which they weren't isolated, right? I mean, we don't have enough time to break it all down, but too quickly of note was that straw that broke the camel's back, if you will, with Boar's Head was not they make it sound like, oh, we had this issue, or we had this incident, we had this issue, and now we're taking care of it. Okay, wait a minute. how many failed inspection reports from the federal government did you have that you didn't act upon?
Right.
You didn't mention also the Family Dollar. Remember the Arkansas?
Yes, with the rats.
Yeah. And how many state inspections did they again ignore until it got big? So you have all these isolated incidents, and then they kind of build up, and then it kind of crosses a threshold into now you've gone into a critical failure mode. You have people that have been impacted with Boar's Head deaths, with Peanut Corporation America deaths, right? Bluebell, right? We had
Yeah.
that critical level of things, right? And they will then try to act as if, oh well, we're doing everything we can. Well, you waited until it was too late. You could have followed up on these red flags all the way, but no, you waited until it was too late. I was writing about this in my I've been writing like about the parallels between when I was on the submarine and the Navy and now.
Yeah.
And I talked about how when I was a nuclear engineer on a submarine. I operated an engine room, the propulsion plant, but I was also a supervisor and a quality assurance inspector in the reactor compartment. And we would have three different devices when we go into that reactor compartment. One of them was like real time, like you're like looking into like a big thick pencil, and there's literally a needle going with your exposure.
Uh-huh.
And it wasn't the most accurate, but it was pretty accurate. But it was real time. We had another device. I actually happen to have it. It looks like this. This would be on my belt, and inside here is um, a portion of this would be red, and it was extremely accurate, but it would be red after I left the reactor compartment.
Right.
The third piece in here is down in the cap. You can't really see it because it has to be taken apart, but this would be like a catastrophic level of exposure, right? If I had to have that red, well, it was too late for me because it would be such a high level of exposure, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I respected the real time actionable input a lot more than the way after the fact someone's already harmed dosimetry, right?
Right.
But what do we see in the food industry sometimes? Are we ignoring the real time? Are we ignoring the shortly after the fact? But we only take action after someone's, death is in the newspaper. The headlines are
Mhm.
filled with all these problems, kind of a thing. It seems as if there are times when there are, we could look at example after example after example of critical failure, public harm, multiple states, if you will, impacted. The numbers are off the chart. It's in the headlines. And now we're going to take action. Whereas, did you just ignore all the real time data that was there? Were you collecting the data and not looking at it?
Yeah.
Were you looking at these as isolated escalations? And your team only said, well, ignore all these step up isolation, these isolated stepping stones, if you will, where things are getting worse and worse until we cross this threshold. And it doesn't make sense, because if we pretend that these risks are isolated, then safety cannot exist.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just can't.
Yeah. I was thinking of a good analogy for this too, because these just examples that we can use for this just pervade our lives. So let's say, for example, you have a teenager who recently got a car, and you're teaching them about the car and maintenance and management of the car, the tires and the oil. Well, they don't really listen to what you say,
Yeah.
and they don't change the oil, and the check engine light goes on in the dash, and they keep driving, and eventually the engine blows up, and they're like, "What? I don't understand." The signs were there, but then they say, "Yeah, but it drove fine yesterday." Well, and now it doesn't. You drove it to catastrophic failure. We're driving these plants to catastrophic failure, and then we act surprised. It's insanity.
Yeah. Well, and then you know, you look at the idea of um when you ice not let's go beyond the red flags and all the issues
Mhm.
right here, right? How many times Chipotle, how many times have we heard, Well, what we're going to do now is, and it's the same exact playbook every single time. We want we want our consumers, we want the American public to know that food safety is our top priority in everything we do. Nothing is more important than the safety of our consumers. And we want you to know that we're going to start investing in food safety. We're going to hire a new advisory board. We're going to hire someone with the responsibility to do this. And we've isolated the issues to our workforce over here. We're going to train these people over here. We're going to shut down for an hour and train these people over here. It's like, okay, I always listen to it and I hear this. You shouldn't have to tell us that it's your priority. Just show us in your
Yeah.
actions. And now you're going to invest in this. Why weren't you investing in this all along? Why weren't you always investing in having, the top people and the top advisory boards or the top equipment or outside testing or whatever it is? But the whole thing of you're going to train these people over here. You know what I never hear? We're going to retrain and recalibrate our top executives who made these decisions that got us into this mess in the first place.
Thank you. Thank you.
You never
They
hear that.
they never blame themselves ever. It's always, yeah, these stupid bastards in the plant. Now we're gonna pound them over the head because bad on them. Okay, we didn't give them enough money, but yeah, they should have been able to fix this on their own. And to your point, like with Family Dollar and the warehouses, it got to the point internally where the trodden on employees were so fed up with it that they became whistleblowers, and the
Yeah.
whole thing blew up there because a guy who got fired, by the way, took videotape of rats running around and chewing on stuff. And then all of a sudden the executives go, oh wow, okay, well maybe we should issue a press release. In an overabundance of caution, we're going to remove rats from our warehouse. Well, congratulations, good job for you. But yeah, no one ever questions the executives. How did we get to this place? No one ever talks to corporate. No one ever talks to corporate.
Yeah. Yeah. It is such what's ironic is that again, it's not isolated to any one company. It's such a common pattern.
Mhm.
Uh, that I was at Food Safety Consortium just a few weeks ago and listening to the insurance companies. Here's what
Mm.
gets me is the insurance companies, they make it sound like they're really stepping up in terms of not only working with companies through these events, but they're putting more into proactive. Like literally, they realize that I'm making up some numbers, but if they forward advance invest into a company and say, well, with your coverage, we'll give you $20,000 towards fixing this or training this or whatever this, that the return on investment is that $20,000 may prevent a $2.9 million, critical failure expense kind of a deal, and that it's going
Right.
to be the best investment of $20,000 to prevent us from losing $2 million or whatever. But there's something that was said in that when they're evaluating these companies, um, they don't share information. They don't want to indicate that there are certain pattern things when they go from company to company to company to company. They
Yeah.
treat each company completely isolated as if there's no reason to show a common pattern or a repeated um, cultural failure or uh, uh, you know a non-food safety red flag that is common, like an ESG red flag. And
Mhm.
it just amazes me that why wouldn't they want to have um, less isolated of a bigger culture across their different companies? Um, always crazy. I don't want to say that that again they're not horrible people or that the insurance companies are bad people, but it would just seems to me that when we say things, and we've been saying this for what 12 years,
Yeah.
culture of food safety or culture, and it's hard to define, it's hard to measure, it's hard to analyze a culture, but a culture of food safety. is it really a culture, or is it just a bunch of different cultures that somehow are like atoms that just kind of bounce around and off of each other? And sometimes we call them this and sometimes we call them that, but it's culture, folks. It's culture.
Mhm. And that's, I think that's the lesson that we're learning now, is we're trying to manage this from the bottom up. And we think that somehow by going from plant to plant to plant to plant to plant and changing things in plants, that somehow that's going to impact corporate. And that's a complete disconnect. They don't necessarily do that because no one even looks at that. A couple of very good comments here that I wanted to bring up as well. So Sean was talking here. This is an important one here as well too. Is we don't give people enough time to think in plants. A lot of times what we do in quality and food safety is we create reports from what happened last month. Oh, okay, yeah, great. How does that help us moving forward? Or the example I always like is we used to like to do online weight measurements for the product. And, we would ask our operators to, graph out the weights and the average and what's the rolling SPCs, and so that we could set up our brackets and all the fun statistical stuff we like to do. And I would find, Darin, at the end of the shift, the operator is sitting in the lunchroom with a calculator doing all the filling out of the form after the fact. When it has zero impact. You can't adjust the machine once the run is done. It didn't help in any way. So we tried to figure out a way to help them with that. And of course, Umisi here is bringing up, I don't know if this whole thing is going to pull up here, but the important part in this is that this is one that everybody hears me rail on all the time, is you have a failure. And the response, to your point, Darin, is training, right? It's the operator's fault. Clearly, as the magnanimous leadership in the company, our workers on the line just don't get it, right? So we need to retrain them until they figure it out. And that doesn't work. So yeah, Dr. D. Paul here was asking about the insurance companies. Were there presentations that were being done for these insurance companies that you saw?
Yeah, there was a panel and it involved an insurance company, and I'm seeing more and more of insurance companies at some of these events. I was talking with a guy from Chubb, CHUBB,
Uh-huh.
in at Food Safety Summit. There is a lot more going on behind the scenes with the insurance industry, especially with recalls,
Mm-hmm.
and why certain companies are determining to categorize something as a class 1 or 2 or 3 type. There's some areas where you don't really have a chance. You don't really have a choice. It has to be, it has to be this one or this one. But there are some companies that are going with the most restrictive
Mm-hmm.
class of recall because they don't want to, again, the headlines, right? They don't want to
Yeah.
see the repeat headlines, so and so company is elevating their class of recall, they're expanding their recall. They will just go to the larger, it's like you went from you know you went from mama bear to baby bear. I'm sorry, from mama bear to papa bear level of recalls, because you don't want to have the news that make it sound like things are getting worse than what it is.
Yeah.
A situation. And I want to
Hmm.
bring up someone you were just mentioning about the data.
Yeah.
Make no mistake, make no mistake, data definitely matters, right? It gives us insight, it helps us connect the dots, but it only saves lives when it's used proactively, not just to explain or record after the fact, right?
Yeah.
If you're only using data to have evidence or to record things, then you're not leading, you're just observing. And this is
Mm-hmm.
the big difference between a preventable loss and a predicted one that you choose not to stop. It's amazing how many times, you brought up Bill Marler. He's been saying this for years. It's amazing how he starts doing an investigation and there were red flags way earlier that no one seemingly paid attention to. And sometimes those red flags are not even food safety red flags. You start looking at companies that, oh, they have a food safety failure. Yeah, but 6 months ago, they had a child labor law violation. They were paying millions of dollars to the federal government, and before that, there was a, not child, but
Oh,
just a
sure.
labor
Yeah.
violation, or there was this failure or that failure. And I know, innocent until proven guilty, and what does child labor law violations have to do with food safety violations? Well, if you're willing to violate child labor laws, you're probably willing, it's not isolated in terms of the leadership and management decisions, right? You're
Yeah.
probably willing to violate food safety regulations.
Right. Yeah. If you have, it's the contracts is only as good as the person signing it, and if that person is willing to bend the rules, it really doesn't mean a whole lot.
Yeah.
Um, ugh, crazy. So yeah, what we're definitely on an analogy show here today. So one of the ones that we were talking about comparing this to food safety as well, then Darin was, let's say you're living on the countryside and you're on this nice house, and there's kind of this road that bends around your house, and there's kind of a blind curve there, and bad accident happens there. It's like, oh, right. And you go and you help people and stuff like that. And then it happens again. And then all of a sudden, the county gets involved and they change the speed limit for that area. And they put up a sign with a little squiggly thing that says danger blind corner up ahead. So hopefully, that'll fix it. And maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. And then something really bad happens and there's a school bus parked around the corner there and it gets hit by a car and really awful. And then all of a sudden it goes to a next level of control. Maybe they put in a stoplight or who knows, whatever else. But if you don't change anything, the repeat chances of another wreck happening there are extremely high. It's going to happen sometime.
Yeah. I mean, I've been at this game for 32 years and, Jack in the Box at the time seemed like an isolated incident.
Yeah.
But you open your eyes and you start paying attention and realize, wow, it happens time after time after time after time. It's changed the name of the company, changed the name of the product, changed the, some of the details, but it's like it's the same thing happening over and over and over again. And I think about, in your example, I think about the people who they live in a house where the road goes down the hill and it has to have a sharp turn right in front of their house. And you've seen some of these before where like a car crashes into their house and it just happens over and over again. And then they put like a big boulder in front of their house.
Exactly. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Because their insurance company is like, yeah, this is not good. You either need to sell your house or you need to, put a big boulder in there or something like that. But you can't not connect the dots, because that driver who crashes, it's a one-time thing. But the person who lives in that house where these happen, in their front yard, after time, you can't not see this and recognize a pattern.
Right.
And the whole idea of something's got to be done, what do you do? And you go to the county, you go to the state, whatever. I'm thinking about that road or whatever. And you know what the first thing they're going to say is, well, we need to have some evidence that shows that there's a pattern here. We need to have some data that proves that we need to have some numbers behind this, because, it just because it happened once doesn't mean that, that we need to invest into, new signage or changing the road patterns or something like that. And then you're like, well, how many cars have to crash into my house and put my family at risk?
Yeah.
Do you have to have before you change the traffic pattern in front of this, in front of my house? Mm-hmm. And it doesn't make sense when you look at the idea of there shouldn't have to be more than one. There shouldn't have to be one in the first place. Maybe you invested enough to look at the idea of, that doesn't look safe. Before any accident ever takes place, maybe we need to do X, Y, and Z.
Exactly.
But no.
Well, and think how ridiculous this response would be. Say, hey, cars keep crashing into my house. We need to do something. And then the county comes back to you, Darin, and says, well, what we're going to do is we're going to train. We're going to retrain all the drivers in the area. That's our response. Really? You think that's going to work? No. Or we're going to put a cop there. We're going to put a police car there every single night to watch that corner. Well, how long is that going to last? It's the same responses we have in the plant. We know they don't work. You have to change the circumstances. You have to change the position. And the analogy of this back to the food industry is, let's say, environmental monitoring. All right, we have a hit on environmental monitoring. No one ever says, and then what? Right? It's like, oh no, I resampled and it was fine. Well, and then what? Well, it was there. Just because you resampled doesn't mean that it's not there. It just means you didn't find it this time. What are you doing now? Well, what do you mean? I have my negative. I'm good. I'll worry about it next quarter. We're really bad at the and then what portion of the conversation in food safety.
Well, there's also the, here's this intersection and 3 drivers were killed there in the last 2 years. We need to do something. Well, we did do something. We sent some people out there to collect data, and here's what we found. Yes, there were 3 people that were killed at that intersection in the last 2 years, but there were over 150,000 cars per year that drove through that intersection that were not killed. So we don't really think that statistically we have to be concerned. So wait, you're flipping the conversation to say that those incidents were so minor compared to all the other incidents. And of course, well, but we don't have any other reported, no one's brought this to attention before or whatever kind of thing. So
Mhm.
I've literally been at an industry event where they said, well, we only have 0.0053 incidents per million kind of a deal. And it's like, okay, but you also said that you serve 55 million, a year or whatever it was. So let's do the numbers here. You can minimize it, but it's not 0.
Right.
So why don't you focus on the fact that you've got a greater than 1 and stop focusing on the let's skew the numbers such that it doesn't look like it's a really big thing. Because to
Mhm.
those people who are directly involved in it, their entire life might be, completely changed as a result of that.
Right. Yeah, the statistics are completely irrelevant to that person it impacts. Right? So part of this as well is the systems that we build up, just like our road analogy for designing. Anybody who works in a production facility for a food company knows how the process works for installation of equipment. What's the primary goal when the engineering group wants to install a new production line? It's not food safety. It's not cleanability. It's line speed efficiency. And say, all right, we're gonna match up this system, and we're going to buy the fastest piece of equipment that won't overload our system and matches everything else. All right, now let's go out and find that piece of equipment. The other key pieces around that, where I'm raising my hand and saying, okay, that's great, but it's backed up against a wall and I can't clean it. It wasn't designed to 3A standards. It's unworkable. And then they roll their eyes and look at you like you're the problem. It's like, no, efficiency is important, but it's not the primary decision factor. And companies, I see them do this time and time again because they're looking at this from a goal standpoint, very narrowed in, versus a system. And as we're talking about here with the roads and everything else, is what is the outcome of the system that we're trying to create? And for us, obviously, it's food safety, which needs to be married in with everything else. I think a lot of times those things get overlooked. Is how can we make it safely and quickly? These things are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah. It's so easy to isolate and say, well, but for this situation it's this, and for this situation it's for this. And looks like Cortland brings up the fact that USDA lives in the plant. How has that helped? Um, it's amazing how many. I mean, look, there are companies that have the inspectors in there, but that you know what is being evaluated and what is the company taking leadership action on. And what we find is that uh, it's amazing how these things slip through. I'll bring up the fact that Boris had how many failed compliance. So it sounds like the USDA was documenting a lot of things, but they weren't being acted upon by the company.
Mhm.
And you look at Peanut Corporation of America. This is one of those. This almost sounds like a dad joke here. What was the problem with the Peanut Corporation of America? Why didn't they have inspectors saying thing in their plant? Well, they found out why they didn't have any records from inspectors in the plant. It was not registered in the state where it was. And the
Mhm.
investigation, they kept looking for where is this stuff coming from? And one of the reasons why the executives were hit with the obstruction of justice because they were lying to them. You might know the answer to this, but let's put it out there to the people who've joined us.
Yeah.
Ultimately, a whistleblower pointed out where they needed to look, and there was the missing production facility for the Peanut Corporation of America was in a city in Texas, and the name of the city is mind-blowing in the story. What was the name of the city of the invisible, hidden, missing plant that was the source of the problem for the Peanut Corporation of America? Does anyone know?
Da, 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 da.
This is the $500 question.
Da, 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 boom, boom.
Where was the missing, hidden plant for the Peanut Corporation of America? It looks like we've stumped the audience. Well, we're going to reveal in 3, 2, 1. The missing, hidden, invisible Peanut Corporation of America plant was in Plainview, Texas.
Right there in Plainview,
It was right
Texas.
there in Plainview.
That's the Matrix laughing at us. Yes.
Yes. But here's the thing. There's a side note. When there was a question of how was it that it wasn't registered in the state of Texas because there was no state level inspection going on. They found that there were 350, 360 food production facilities in the state of Texas that were not registered with the state and not being inspected.
Wow.
Crazy. So again, it wasn't an isolated case in that there was this company that was not even registered as a food manufacturing facility. There were so many others. So again, we keep coming back. It does sound like a dad joke right there.
Yeah.
The worst category of dad jokes where we're laughing at an ironic trivial piece of information about a very horrible failure in food safety.
Mm-hmm.
So
and I think
food safety, but pointing out the quite odd piece of information there.
And really this circles back to our topic title here. And I think something from a food safety standpoint we all need to push back on is we're seeing these patterns, and these are not isolated incidents. We need to, as food safety professionals, to step back and look at this and really push hard on isolated incidents, especially when we know it's not. We're seeing environmental hits in the plant. We're seeing sporadic problems in the product. And something happens that's systemic. Odds are it's not. It is not an isolated incident. And the company is going to take further damage through those recalls that just grow and grow and grow. And that's when it gets into the public consciousness, like Boar's Head and like Peanut Corporation of America, and now with Nate's with the pasta. And it all comes back to, and this is a topic for a future chat as well that we're working on, is supplier management, right? Huge. We've used suppliers in the Nate's one, right, with this pasta that's going into everything, or with PCA, this peanut butter going into everything. These industrial suppliers are a major potential risk. To your point earlier, Darin, what is the usage rate? What is the potential hits within these operations? Because it may be a low risk item, but if you're using it through your entire process and it's ubiquitous, that's a bigger threat than you think it is. And clearly with these pastas, people weren't looking at it that way. They weren't looking at it as a potential issue in their operation. And now we realize, well, it's a potential isolated incident back to this core manufacturer of this base product for everybody, far from isolated. But who's looking at that?
Well, very good point. And, Jane just brought up, key messages that have influenced corporate leadership to change culture. Here's what's amazing. I've been with companies that are working on their likelihood and severity models kind of a thing. And it's amazing how let's put blinders on and let's focus on the most convenient data that makes it such that our product looks like there's no likelihood of severity, right? Even Peanut Corporation of America, they were like, well, there's no problems with peanuts and food safety. We're like, what, were you not paying attention to these other incidents here? You have to look at not only your company, but your product, your sector, your competitors, you got to look at the bigger, fuller picture to do that. And when we create the most convenient models of likelihood and severity, we communicate those, and you wonder why people think, oh, I didn't need to do that, because what's the worst that can happen? Some people may get sick. And was it you, Bryan, telling me about, was it an ice cream company you were
The one in
dealing with?
Florida who refused to recall?
No, about they were only looking at an isolated consumer, and their sign contradicted their message.
Oh, yeah. So for their target audience, yes. So
Right.
I worked with a company that was making novelty products for children. And when I looked at their food safety plan and helped them evaluate it, it said, our products are for the general population. I'm like, really? You think that they're for the general population? And then we looked at some of their marketing material, and it was all full of kids eating, like popsicle type things. Wasn't popsicles, but similar type products. And I'm like, and you're telling me these are general population? No, these are kids. You are selling to kids. That's different risk. And I saw kind of the light go on in the food safety manager's head as he was making the connection. I'm like, you need to have a stricter food safety program because of this. Do you see that now? And he's like, yeah, and he was starting to get it because he was looking at it just through that same model. I think part of this too, then, Darin, is that we tend to look at risk from these different ingredients that we buy as the same. Is every pasta company that you're purchasing from the same, and you look at it from a high, low severity standpoint and you evaluate the pasta? No, it's the company you're buying the pasta from that contributes to the risk. And if all of a sudden your procurement group switches to a new pasta supplier that's dirt cheap, has your risk changed? Yes, it has. But has your food safety plan been updated? Probably not.
Yeah, it's amazing how many times I've had conversations with folks, and the the whoever the VP or director or whatever the title is, FSQA lead, will say something to the effect of, yeah, we found out months after we changed a supplier that we were using different ingredients and no one informed us. And
Yeah.
like, I'm glad we were saving 17 cents on, per thousand or whatever it is. But we had a critical failure with our labeling. And the last one I dealt with was an allergen issue.
Mhm.
And it was one of those things. There was some money that was going to be saved over here. They went with this. And now, no one told the food safety, FSQA folks. And they ended up having to do a recall because of the mislabeled, because of an allergen. And it's like, they completely, so the cost of the recall completely overshadowed the cost of the savings for that supplier change. And it could have been prevented if someone was connecting the dots and acting proactively,
Yeah.
and it cued in the right people in advance. But when we don't do that, it becomes problematic. And this is one of the reasons why, when I look at companies that I think really have a good food safety program, one of the most common characteristics that I find is that they have either quarterly or annual, whatever it is, maybe semi-annual food safety big company meetings. And they emphasize the fact that everyone has to go. Literally, the warehouse people, the maintenance people, engineering, the people who work on their sourcing, their distributors, even the guy the people who are out there, the gate guardhouse or whatever, and
Yeah.
every single employee, and that those people make sure that the executives, right, the people above them are required to be at these meetings, because it's like that whole, the Navy, we talk about all the time. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And
Yeah.
guess what? After the fact, you can't go, oh, there's our weakest link right there, we're going to jump on them. Well,
Mhm.
what are you doing to make sure that your chain, if you will, from the lowest to the highest person on the totem pole, or the food safety, whatever you want to call it, everyone was involved and on the same page, and tying it into your mission, to your protocols, and understanding, this, and perhaps you would avoid what I see as one of the most common disconnects, is the wall between PR communication and FSQA.
Yeah.
It's amazing the claims will be made by this, and we'll put this on the label, and we're going to advertise this, and maybe you should have checked with your food safety team.
Right. And that's, yeah, to continue the chain analogy, we stop the checking of the chain at the plant. We don't check the chain at corporate. So to your example with the 17 cents per thousand, okay, we caused a recall, but does the SVP of procurement still get his bonus because he came under? Yeah, I bet he does. I bet he does.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a
Well,
huge
we've seen that
disconnect.
far too often, right? Because most of the time, those executives, the metrics that are being used to evaluate the performance have nothing to do with food safety. Amazing.
Mhm.
Amazing. What was it? The CEO of Chipotle, during those outbreaks, he still got his $15 million annual bonus. And when CBS
Right.
News questioned him about it, he's like, yeah, my evaluation from the board has nothing to do with food safety. Why?
Exactly. That's a major problem. And that's one of the things, and that's a great segue. That's what I've been working on. And as everybody may have noticed here this morning, so I'm partnering up with Culture Advisory Group, and we're working on this with risk assessment. And we're really starting to see really good results in this. We're talking with companies, and to your point, Darin, sitting down and talking with these people and saying, okay, Mr. CEO, can you explain to me how you incorporate food safety into your company? And if that CEO goes, what are you talking about? That's not my job. My job is earnings per share and stocks and market velocity and all that stuff that CEOs normally measure. If I can see that disconnect, that's going to cascade through the entire organization. And that works for everybody. To your earlier examples with label issues, with allergens and things like this, you got to catch those things up front. We all know this from a quality standpoint. The earlier you catch the defect in the process, the better off you are. The defect often starts at marketing and R&D. So marketing's like, oh my God, this would be an amazing product with this new superfood. We have to launch this immediately. And then they start getting the R&D guys to launch it, and then they're doing pilots, and the next thing you know, it's in the plant. And nobody knows anything about it. Nobody knows anything. It's crazy. So we're taking a step back on that and looking at it at a higher level. And we're almost out of time here. So I wanted to put the link in here for a culture advisory group. And also, Brett is on the call too, Darin. And he put together an amazing white paper around risk optimization and this whole process of looking at this in the company. If you want to copy that report, just put report here in the comments, and then Brett will reach out to you and get you over that report. It's really nicely done. I'm very happy with it. So super excited to be working with Culture Advisory Group on this. This in my view, Darin, is the future. This is a big chunk of the missing puzzle that I think is going to fit in really well.
That's great. I'm going to put a link into the
Oh, beautiful.
chat. Oh, there it is. I talked about some submarine stuff here. I've got a series of articles. It's like a serial story in New Food Magazine out of London. Episode 4 is out. And at the bottom of
Nice.
episode or installment 4 is the link to the 3 prior ones. And the gist of it is that it's amazing what I learned from the Culture Board of Submarine, and I learned about leadership and responsibility and how transferable it is into the food safety context there. And oh, you know what, Sean? First pass quality, only a KPI for quality and sanitation, and not everyone else in the organization. Great question. And half the time you get the response of, well, that's the way we've always done things.
Mm.
And think about it. I was a public school teacher, and I had Bryan, do you know what an active board or interactive dry erase board is? You ever seen
Yeah,
those?
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Well, about 20 years ago, I was using those when they were new. And a teacher reached out to me from another school, like in Kentucky, I believe. And she's like, "Oh, I wish I could use those." I'm like, "Well, you can project it onto your dry erase board." She goes, "We don't even have dry erase boards. We have chalkboards."
Oh
I'm
my
like,
goodness.
"Okay, yeah, that's antique, or that's ancient technology." She goes, "Well, that's what we use here." And it's like, think about that. Imagine a student today in school and they're using a chalkboard in a classroom, and kids are using more technology, uh, in their games and stuff. They're using more technology. I mean, you can see where your Lyft car is and on the way to
Yeah.
picking you up, or you can order food to be. And it's like, if people are using more technology as a kid or just in their private life than they're using in an academic setting, then what is their view of education? And the idea looking forward. The point I'm
Huh.
bringing up here is that if we base our view of leadership on the past and not think about it in terms of a legacy going forward, and the technology and the leadership decisions and the culture, right? Culture has to be the culture of the future, shaped by the culture of the past, but
Right.
not cemented, if you will,
And
in style and form and function and scope and scale, all that kind of stuff, in the culture of the past. Culture
yeah,
has to advance.
exactly. And that's the perfect way to end the chat. We could talk for another hour on this
Where'd the
easily.
time go? I didn't even realize what time
Yeah.
it was. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh no, that's okay. Fantastic chat. Amazing input here, guys. I see some people in here asking for the report. Fantastic. Please put your comments in here. As you know, this chat remains on LinkedIn, so we keep an eye on this. So definitely check that out. And as usual, Dr. D, love having you on the show. You're always just a font of information. Thank you, sir.
Let me write that down and tell my sons that here. I am a font.
Font of information. Fancy, fancy. Anyway, thank you everybody for joining us this week. Another fantastic chat. And of course, we'll be back here next week at the same time, 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. on the West Coast. And I'll bring another amazing guest like Dr. Darin Detwiler on the show to have a conversation with you on food safety. But in the meantime, enjoy your weekend, drive slow on curves, and we'll see you back here next Friday. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you then.